Welcome back to Format Podcast. On today's episode, we have on Kai Harkey and Katie Spurgin, who both work for Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation. Katie mainly focuses on their Stewards of the Wild program. If you have not heard of that program, just a blurb from their website is Stewards of the Wild, Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation's Conservation Leadership Program. Equips emerging leaders aged 21 to 45 with opportunities to actively participate in stewardship of Texas's wild things and wild places by providing education, networking, and outdoor experiences. I've been a member of the program for several years, and it's really a great program, so it was really exciting to sit down with Katie and talk through a lot of the details. And then Kai worked for Texas Parks and the Texas Parks Department for nearly 10 years. And then moved over to the foundation, and now kind of really works between the two organizations, although his focus is on the foundation. And so it was really great to sit down with them and dive into a lot of Texas Parks information. So I hope you all enjoy. Well, cool. Thank you, Kai and Katie, for joining us today. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So I think just from a high level, I just want to talk about what you guys are up to, obviously with Stewards of the Wild and then the Texas Parks Foundation. So I'd love just high level if you want to kick us off on what you guys are up to.
Yeah, sure. So we both work for Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation, which is the official nonprofit of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, the state agency. And we work to really conserve our wild things and wild places for future generations.
Sweet. And you're full-time with Stewards of the Wild.
With Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation, Stewards of the Wild is a program of the foundation.
Okay,
so
I see.
Same organization.
Thing. Okay,
yeah.
But you're 100%. Is your day-to-day in Stewards of the Wild, or how do those separate as far as the foundation versus Stewards of the Wild?
I'd say I work maybe 90% on Stewards of the Wild, and that other 10% I assist with other things at the foundation. So. Okay. Yeah, it's a pretty heavy stewards, and we've expanded. We've hired an additional staff member in the last year, and so there's a lot to do on Stewards of the Wild, really just trying to reach people and grow our impact.
Very cool. Yeah. What about you, Kai?
So I worked for Texas Parks and Wildlife Department in the State Parks Division for 10 years and came over to the foundation 2.5 years ago. And I'm a project manager helping to just support the relationship between the State Parks Division mostly and the Parks and Wildlife Foundation. So, big picture of the foundation, it's in so many ways is as diverse as the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department is, right? You think about all the things that TPWD is involved in, from keeping an eye on deer populations to welcoming the next generation of kiddos into our state parks. We with the foundation support all those programs. So Stewards of the Wild, Pollinators and Prairie, Gear Up for Game Wardens, a lot of diverse programming that the foundation's involved in.
Yeah, it's a huge scope. And when you say the deer populations, I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is they see Texas Parks and Wildlife and they think it's about parks, but they forget the and wildlife. And it's you're also the governing body of all of the deer are owned by the state, at least from my understanding. And so it's tracking those populations and issuing hunting permits. My understanding that's all TPWD.
Yeah, that's right. The Parks and Wildlife Department has the wildlife biologists that are keeping an eye on the health of Texas game populations and helping to make informed decisions around hunting policies, both on public and private lands.
So I'm curious, what does your day-to-day look like? You're a project manager. What does that mean? You obviously have a huge scope. So it's when you go in Monday morning, what are you doing?
Gosh, it's a little bit of everything. So just supporting cool projects. So one of which we have a new state park opening, most likely in 2026, Palo Pinto Mountains, kind of square in the middle of Abilene and Fort Worth. It's going to be an incredible site. And I spent a lot of time last week and this week supporting the operations there. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation is helping to build the park itself.
And that's just the check-in the ranger stations and all the actual components that it takes to have a state park to allow thousands of visitors a year.
Yeah, the roads, the campsites, the signage, everything really that goes into it.
What a fascinating process. I'd love to be a fly on the wall to see how do you take a chunk of land and then decide how to turn it into a park. That's cool.
It's a long process.
It's a long process and start with the end in mind, right? So who is going to come use this park? How do we want them to engage with the natural and cultural, recreational resources here, and build a park around that?
Yeah. Was that park purchased through, I think it was a bill that passed with like the $1 billion of funding and this and that, or is that previous?
It was purchased previous to that, yes, because that was a very recent bill that passed.
I was going to say, it seems like you guys are moving quick.
If only, that would be so great.
Yeah.
Y'all already have the contracts lined up for building the roads? Because we'd love to throw our hat in.
Yeah, they're pretty far along with the roads up there and a lot of TxDOT support. But yeah, Matthew, you bring up we have been fortunate in Texas to have voters several times in the past several years vote, stand up and come to the ballot boxes to support future parks, both in, I think it was 2019 with the passage of the rededication of the sporting goods sales tax, which had a huge majority of voters vote to rededicate that to state park operations. And then 2 years ago now, I guess, the $1 billion dedication. So that's operations versus $1 billion for new parks.
Oh, interesting.
And we're very excited about that. But that's the department right now is working very hard in looking at land purchases and being mindful again of what we want, what the people of Texas need.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel that since the $1 billion one had passed, looking for new parks, has there been a lot of movement in that? Like, have they secured a lot of land? I mean, are there other? I know you just mentioned the one new park that was before that, but what are we looking at in the next 5 to 10? Is there a whole nother list coming that we don't know about, or what are we allowed to talk about here?
I think the department and the foundation are working together to look at a lot of different properties. And so I definitely think, that'll happen. And, we just added some acreage in East Texas. And then I know they're looking at some stuff in Central Texas. So I'm sure there will be much more to come.
Yeah. And so those land purchases, are they purely for parks though? Because I know there's a lot of money going around for conservation easements, which I love, because I think taking a property and then locking it up to not have development's great, but it also like limits access, which is like a big sticking point for me. And so do you know if all of those purchases are strictly for parks, or are they buying any that are going into easements?
Yeah, great question. I mean, big picture, right? We need like every Texan involved in conservation in some way. So in Texas, of course, is a largely private land state. So Matthew, the use of conservation easements is a huge and important strategy to protect the wild things and wild places in Texas. But that $1 billion is set aside specifically for the purchase and development of new state parks.
Cool. Mm-hmm. That makes me very excited. I kind of have a personal bone to pick with the Balcones Canyonlands, which I love. And it's like in Travis County, we have like 30,000 acres of protected land, which is amazing because it's 30,000 acres of protected land. But at the same time, it's like I'm pretty involved in hiking in the outdoors, and, come hit the summer months where the weather's nice, it's hard to get into a state park. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, man, we have all this land when the golden cheek's not here, let's open it up. But that's a whole nother side story unrelated to y'all. But one of these days I'm going to have them on and gripe at them, have it all private. But so what else can you tell us about the state park that's planning to open up here soon? I think you said it was kind of like Northwest Texas a bit, but what are the details you're able to share? I know people love hearing about new parks.
Well, it's a beautiful state park. I've been there once with a Stewards of the Wild group from the Fort Worth area, and that was an incredible trip. It was long before they started the roads and any of the construction on the buildings, and so we got to do a hike, and there's a large lake on the property. It's pretty, Palo Pinto Mountain State Park is pretty hilly, pretty mountainous, I guess you would say, and it's beautiful. I know there's going to be quite a few campsites. I don't know the number, but I've heard nothing but great things. It's a beautiful area. So,
how many miles of trails do you know yet?
I don't know.
I don't know that number offhand, but
plenty though. It's a large piece of property.
That's awesome, because that's where a lot of the parks too kind of have somewhat limited hiking. I mean, Pedernales Falls near here and Colorado Bend are pretty sweet because they both have over 30 miles. But then outside of that, it's like you go to Enchanted Rock, epic, but it's like if you look at total mileage, it's not, if you're trying to go for like a crazy long hike. So I love when there's parks that have, the 30, 40 plus miles in the trails.
You'll love, especially because you spend time in Port O'Connor, you'll love Powderhorn State Park whenever it opens.
That was hopefully coming to that one.
Within the next decade, I'll say, hopefully.
Decade? We're talking that long?
Yes, it is. 17,000 plus acres between the WMA and the park. That'll be split. The WMA will be a larger area, but the park is still going to be huge. And so there will be a lot of area to explore and hike and fish. And kayak.
Yeah.
So
WMA, is that Wildlife Management Area? Is that what that stands for?
That's right.
Okay,
yes.
So is that land, I'm guessing, I don't know a lot about the WMAs, but I'm guessing that is land owned by the state for wildlife management. I'm guessing that's basically a conservation easement in some sense of another. It's land set aside for wildlife.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting question about the access, right? And ultimately, if we're trying to balance, people connecting with nature by way of access, and we balance that with the protection of fragile wildlife populations, there's a balance there. In our state parks, and I'll rattle some numbers off, and I think I'll get this right. 88 Texas state parks right now, probably north of 650,000 acres, meant to both protect the natural and the cultural resources, but also be a destination for 10 million visitors every year.
10 million? Is that how we're getting?
Yeah,
the park?
they're
Wow.
Pushing every year. It's north of 9 million. If they haven't yet, they'll push 10 million.
That's
here
amazing.
soon. And then wildlife management areas, so they're supported by our wildlife division. And again, a lot of hardworking wildlife biologists making decisions about what is best for the health and sustainability of wildlife populations. And I don't know the number of how many we have, but I do think it's north of 800,000 acres of wildlife management areas, which are still accessible both to hunting and fishing populations. But you can go, if you do your research, figure out which ones are open and which ones have access. There are accessible wildlife management areas where you can do hiking and fishing and even some camping.
Is it by permit only, or is it just like open access to some of them?
Drawn hunts is primary. Like I know at Powderhorn, we were
Yeah.
talking to the biologist there, Tori Haynes. Shout out Tori, she's great. But she was talking about, they do a number of drawn hunts every year, both for the exotics and I think some of the native game species there. But
Yeah, I spent $900 last year on trying to get hunts.
well, your
Too sick.
points, your points should be adding up. I mean,
Yeah.
eventually you'll get chosen. We hope.
Yeah, this year I'm going to do it again. But I went through the list. And I was like, check, every single one.
You can also
basically.
do standby. You can go to that management area or wherever you're going and stand in a line, and they'll choose, a name from a hat or something, and
cool.
you have a better chance of getting drawn doing that.
Some of those hunts were pretty cool. They were like 4 different hunts. They had like some combo ones that were all guided, and I know they were raising money with it, I'm sure, but it was really cool, some of the experiences on there.
They're also helping manage the population. Like at Powderhorn, there are some exotics that were brought there many, many years ago by previous owners, and they're trying to eliminate some of those populations. So the drawn hunts actually help with that.
Oh, cool.
What exotics are they trying to get rid of?
There's a few axis there which beautiful animals, but they're not native to that area. And then is it not nilgai, not aoudad? It's the other very large from India looking deer. It's because sandbar. It's sandbar.
Sandbars.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are so many. I think Tori said this weekend when they first received the land, they estimated 2,700 of them on the property, and now they're of sandbar.
What is that?
It is a large, deer adjacent animal from
I think it's
India.
like from India, okay.
India.
Yeah.
It's from India, and they're beautiful, but they are giant. I mean, I think they range between 400 and 600 pounds
Is it
each.
the scimitar orcs with the white body and the orange neck? Is that what they are?
No. I'll show you a picture after the podcast.
He's like
but-
avid hunter
Yeah,
over here.
but I mean, they're really interesting. You'll see a lot. But she said they've gotten it down to about 800 now, so that's
Oh, wow.
good progress.
Yeah, that's a lot taken care of.
I know all about nilgai, but I don't. I'm very curious now.
So you have like every other animal you can think of hanging in this office
I'll
somewhere.
send you some information.
Okay.
Very cool. I want to dive into Stewards of the Wild a little bit. Like, what's the history of Stewards of the Wild? Like,
Yeah.
why did they start it? When did they start it? Give
Sure.
us the rundown.
So it was about 12 years ago, I believe 2012, 2013. The idea was cracked by a couple guys in Dallas, Josh and Mac. Thank you, Josh and Mac. They approached the foundation with the idea to start, some sort of young professionals networking group that focused on the outdoors, people who love the outdoors, loved hunting, fishing, that kind of thing. They were looking for other people to connect with. And the foundation decided to support it. And when it first started up, it was actually Jay Clayburgh, when he was at the foundation, he supported the program.
Very cool. Like financially, he was like
No. He was working for the foundation
Okay.
and helped manage the
Oh, I
program
see.
to
Oh,
get it
wow.
off the
Oh, cool.
ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so from there, it's grown. We now have 8 active chapters across the state. We have a statewide chapter for people who are not located in one of the major metropolitan areas. We've just founded this new statewide conservation committee. So lots going on, lots of opportunities, but ultimately it's the foundation's conservation leadership program. So what we're trying to do is introduce people, no matter how much experience they have with the outdoors, whether they grew up hunting, fishing, hiking, and they love it, or they have no clue what the Texas outdoors is about. They've never left the city. We want everyone involved to give them opportunities to get outside and like start caring about our coastal prairies and our lakes and streams and rivers and our, the Blackland Prairie that we're trying to restore and, all of that. And then we want to give them educational tools. We want to increase their awareness, like what's going on with this and that. And then ultimately we want them to go on and spread the word, be advocates for conservation, whether it's speckled trout or it's white-tailed deer or it's black-eyed Susan. We want them to go advocate to help protect our wild things and wild places. And that could look like volunteer work, or it could be serving on the board of a conservation organization, or starting some new initiative, or just spreading the word, to their immediate family. It could be that small, or planting a native plant in their backyard and trying to attract native pollinators.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, even the small moves like that make a big difference in
exactly
getting people involved. And so when you say that Stewards Wild creates these opportunities, what do those opportunities look like? Like if you sign up to be a member and you say, I'm Joe Blow, I know nothing of conservation. Cool, yes. Stewards of the Wild, I sign up. Now what?
So each chapter will put on events themselves. So say the Houston chapter, for example, they'll put on a fishing tournament. They'll put on a camping trip. They'll put on a hike. They'll put on a happy hour where they invite a couple of conservation experts to come speak to the group and teach them about whatever topic they're focused on that day. And then there's the statewide chapter, which is really more staff involved in the planning. Me and Emmy, my associate, and those are similar, but they're usually a bit more involved. We have more conservation experts. We try to go somewhere that's typically private land or that they cannot access already because we're such a private land state. Mm-hmm. We want to give them kind of exclusive opportunities. So it's like, why would I join Stewards of the Wild? Well, if you join, you can come with us and see these incredible places that otherwise, the public is not getting access to. And the events change year to year. And it's all volunteer-led by the chapters. So it's really dependent on what they might be focused on or interested in.
Very cool. And you said you're welcoming to people that have no experience in the outdoors.
Yes.
And let's say you have a weekend. I want to talk about the one you just had, what that was about. But if you have a fishing tournament, but I don't know how to fish. I mean, are there opportunities for the people that know nothing? Do you have mentorship type programs or things like that?
Yes. So if you're looking for a consumptive side of conservation, we have a mentored hunting and fishing program. It's specifically for people who are new or novice hunters or anglers, and they can apply. And we get more applicants than we have spots on trips, unfortunately, but we will place them on a hunt or a fishing trip. We'll pair them with a mentor. We'll have experts there. So they will go out to these trips and they will learn, what kind of fish are in the area they're fishing, how to tie a knot, how to cast, how to reel it in, how to store a fish on a boat or in a net if you're wading, and then how to fillet the fish, and then how to cook the fish,
and
then how to find other opportunities to go fish in the future. So it gets really detailed, and we do that for hunting on the hunting side too. And the hunts really vary. We do a lot of different species. We'll do big game species, but we'll do duck and dove and quail occasionally, and some of the birds, smaller things. But we really go into detail. In that mentored hunting program, we partner with Texas Wildlife Association. And they're awesome. So that has been a really, really popular program, and I love working on it.
I did it last year.
You did?
The adult learn to hunt.
Oh,
right?
So you did the Texas Wildlife Association program.
That's what I'm kind of curious. Is how is that? I was curious how that connected because it was through Texas Wildlife Association. The adult learn to hunt.
Yes.
So is that you guys work hand in hand, or how is that?
Yeah. So I know it's a little confusing. Yeah. Texas Wildlife Association has their own adult mentored hunting program. It's called Adult Learn to Hunt program, right? And then Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation, through the Stewards of the Wild program, has a mentored hunting initiative. So we only do a small number of hunts, maybe 4 to 6 every year, sometimes more if we can, sometimes less, depending. But I know Matt Hughes over at Texas Wildlife Association, they'll do upwards of, 30 plus now.
It sounded like they were doing a lot.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to increase that. They're trying to increase staff and their capacity. So they're separate programs, although we work with them because they are truly experts on hunting.
Yeah.
So
it was a great experience. I'm sure it's similar to with Stewards of the Wild, being able to go and have a mentor. And, I've been around hunting a lot of my life, but not like, this is how you actually skin a deer and cook it and do the whole process. So I thought was really compelling. And recently you guys had a fishing trip in Port O'Connor that I think was one of these that was meant for new anglers to come down. And
we did.
My buddy, Grant Pittman, who's involved with you all, he's a good buddy of mine. He actually produces the podcast when Mercedes can't. But
thanks, Grant.
He, is a good friend of mine and was telling me about that trip. But I'm like, I've kind of grown up fishing my whole life. So I'm not going to lie. There's a part of me that was like, I kind of want to go because it's an awesome trip. But like, I'm not a new angler. And so what's the policy there on some of these trips that you guys have? Because I didn't want to cheat the system. I felt like I was.
Yeah, so we say new or novice. So perhaps you grew up fishing, but your dad did everything. That, in some ways, was kind of my case. We went fishing from the time I could stand up, but he did everything for me. So I never, although I learned how to do some things then, maybe I took a break for that, between high school and my early 20s. And I don't know how to fish anymore. I don't know where to go. That's fine. We would love to have applicants like that, and we can teach you as an adult because we really think although getting youth into the outdoors is extremely important as well, and teaching them is extremely important as well because of that example I just gave you, it's also really important to get young adults out because they're the ones who can teach their children. Because if the adult does not know how to hunt or fish, the kid would have to seek out that on their own, and
which is
usually
hard
that's
to
not
do.
going to happen, right? And so it really comes from the parents, and so I think that's why it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm involved with this nonprofit called West Cave Preserve out near Hamilton Pool, and our whole mission there is connecting children to nature, which I think is a wonderful mission, and like you definitely need to fulfill that. But I've always said, I'm like, well, what about the adult? Like, what about the kid that just missed the opportunity? Now he's like 20 and doesn't know. I'm like, where's that? And that's you guys, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think I think about this all the time. This staircase or this path that people are on, be they kids or adults, right? Of I'm not comfortable in the outdoors, and then something gets you exposed and aware of the outdoors, and you go and hopefully you feel like you belong. You feel safe there. Like, oh, this is a cool spot, and you have a great time. You make a great memory, and then you start to see like, oh, actually, nature is important to things that I care about in my life. It fits into these other things. And then finally you kind of culminate as an advocate, send the elevator back down. I want to help these other people engage. I want to teach my kids how to fish or camp. And with that, it's this staircase or this cycle, right, of all of us helping to bring up the next generation of conservationists. Again, like kids or adults, there's people out there that we need to help connect with nature, because they are the future conservationists, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and talking about that cycle, it's so great to see through our mentored hunting program. We will have mentees come on for the first time ever, never hunted before, and 2 years later, they dove headfirst into it. They know everything there is to know. They have all the gear, and they come back and they mentor for us. And so they can empathize with those people who have never done it before, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I could cry about it. Yeah, it's really nice.
You had mentioned earlier on that Stewards of the Wild is mainly focused for young professionals. Is there like an age cutoff? I mean, how long can you be a Steward of the Wild? So
we target age 21 to 45. Okay. We're not going to say, can I check your ID and kick you out? But we would love for Stewards of the Wild to be kind of the launch platform for your conservation involvement. So always be involved. If you want to help out, let us know. But we want you to go on and do more, whether that's with the foundation or with another organization or through your volunteer work. So
yeah, very cool. Sounded like you just came from a Stewards of the Wild weekend. Tell
I
us about
did.
that. What did you guys have going on?
We were down in Port O'Connor on the coast. We had our first statewide Conservation Committee coastal trip.
Because that was the new group that you mentioned earlier that had
Yes.
formed. And then this was a in-person event at the coast.
Yes.
Okay.
So the committee we formed to focus less on consumptive events and more educational, non-consumptive events. So this was the first one we did with the coastal subcommittee of that committee. I won't get involved in all the details, but ultimately we invited, and this is stewards from across the state. So Austin, Houston, we had one from Fort Worth, Bryan College Station. We went down Friday evening and we had Pat Murray come from CCA. He's the national president of the
He's a really
Coastal
interesting
Conservation.
guy.
Yeah. He's amazing. And he's not, I don't think he ever meant to be, but he's a motivational speaker as well when it comes to conservation.
Yeah.
And
he definitely has some passion when he starts talking.
Yeah. And
that's cool.
that talk was amazing because one of the things he focused on was the CCA model of like membership and fundraising first, and then advocacy, and then habitat. And so without the advocacy, even if you do a bunch of habitat work, you've got to have people to protect that habitat work. So if no one knows why it's important and why to protect it, it'll just get destroyed, right? So you've got to have the advocates. And that's like what we're trying to do with the Stewards of the Wild is create these advocates for conservation across the state. Anyway, that was just Friday night. So Friday night, and it's also these opportunities are great for stewards to get to know each other and make connections across the state. And that could be within the conservation world. It could be professional. It could be personal.
Yeah,
you know,
making friends. Yeah.
I know some couples that have come out of Stewards of the Wild, which is fun.
Yeah.
So
You're here first. It's get off Tinder, y'all.
Right.
Join Stewards of the
yeah,
Wild.
and everyone is like in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and they still want to have fun. So it's a good time to get together and like in a relaxed environment, learn more about conservation. So Saturday, we got to go to Powderhorn. We went to the WMA first, and we met with Tori Haynes, the biologist there, who is amazing. And she helped us transplant and plant some Indian seed grass on the property, which is a native grass. And they've had a lot of success there at Powderhorn with the native grasses coming back since they've done some burnings and some herbicide.
Were they having issues like the blue stem and all that coming through?
I think so, but I think maybe it was more of the running oak.
Okay.
So it was like the brushy stuff really
guess that's further
inhibiting.
south too,
Yeah. And so we did that. We learned about the WMA, what they're doing there, why it's important. And then Sarah, the superintendent at the state park, or future state park, spoke to us about that on the state park side. We got to do a tour, and then they got to see the restored lodge there at the park, which is beautiful, and I'm excited for people to see it. And then we got to do a little fishing there off the bulkhead. And we did catch a few fish.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that was Saturday. And then Saturday night, the department was very generous. They donated some fish someone had caught for a little fish fry that night.
Cool.
So they got to see, okay, this is what you can do with fish. And then Saturday morning, Ranch Water Rentals actually donated a couple guides and boats to take the participants out on the bay and get to see the bay in the morning and do a little fishing. Some folks caught their first redfish, which was very exciting.
Unforgettable experience. I
Unforgettable.
Say. Cast the first one.
Unforgettable. Awesome. Yeah.
How
so
cool.
that was this weekend, and we're still like tweaking these committee events to see what works and what doesn't. But we'll have some later in September in Central Texas, and then we'll do one in North Texas, hopefully later in the year, and we'll see where it goes.
So I'm going to ask a question I know people are probably the first thing they'll ask is, how much does this cost? And so like to become a member, what's that fee? And then these trips, I mean, it sounds amazing, but it sounds expensive too.
So yeah, I totally understand that. And that's really something we try to keep in mind. And the chapters will actually subsidize a lot of the costs of these trips for their members. And that's one of the benefits of being a member. You get a discounted price typically. Membership alone, it's about $100 a year.
That's not bad.
No, and there are other options that give you discount, a 2-year and a lifetime, which is a really good value.
Yeah,
If you think about it,
huh?
I think it's $1,000 or $1,250 maybe.
Oh, yeah, it's really not bad.
It's really good if you're going to be involved for a long time. And it's also just supporting the program, which we really appreciate. So this weekend's trip only cost $50.
Holy cow, all in, $50.
All in $50 plus the gas to get down there, right? And the food along the way. So we're really trying to make these accessible events too, because I know, especially for people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they've got young families, they've got a mortgage payment. I'm trying to make sure we mitigate, any extra expenses they might incur.
That's wonderful. I think that's like one of the hurdles people look at is like if you're new to hunting or fishing, like that in itself seems like such like a overwhelming thing to just go into.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, it's so expensive, and people I think just kind of give up sometimes. So I love that you guys are keeping all that in mind.
And other organizations create opportunities. The department creates opportunities for people to get out and fish that are very low cost. So they're out there. You just got to find them. And Stewards of the Wild is a good way to get connected with those other organizations as well.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump all over the place here, but I'm fascinated with the process of making a state park. And I don't know if this is like totally your expertise, but like back on that, like what does that look like? Like from the initial thing of like, okay, we got $1 billion to then what's that process? And tell me if, it's not the right guy to ask this question to or whatever, but like, how do you look at this piece of land versus this one, and then you make the purchase, then what does that process look like to actually like get to a park? I mean, I know that has to be a huge undertaking.
Yeah, I can speak to a little bit of it. I know that the department right now has a very complex set of criteria they put together. People of Texas have trusted them with $1 billion to buy state parks that will be state parks forever, right? And they take that very seriously. So they put together first like the list. This is looking at all kinds of factors like how complex and unique the natural resources are, the cultural resources, and the recreational resources. That's a trio that we think about a lot. Where they are in relation to populations, where they are in relation to existing parks. So that's whenever they're weighing out if there's any complicated aspects of the land's history that would not make it suitable for public access. They're thinking through all that process.
And that's like if there was like a heavy Native American population and they left artifacts, like you wouldn't want to use that land, or like what does that mean exactly?
No, good question. That would be like for us. That would be we even more so want to. That would be an example of like a very unique cultural resource that we want to help protect. But no, in some cases there might have been industrial uses on land that might make it unsafe or unfit for development. So that's the process of looking through, and the department again is working very hard right now with a lot of support from the foundation to make the decisions on what pieces of land, and think as well about your state park. None of them are exactly the same. There are things that make this park unlike anywhere else in the world. So like some sense of place, right? What makes that place really unique. So all those things are going together. And then whenever the purchase is actually made, we have a very talented set of park planners. So they specialize in laying out the building blocks of the design and in doing a ton of community engagement, recreational user engagement to make come to let's do specifically 80 campsites, and 12 of them are going to be RV hookups, or we'll do 6 cabins, whatever that is. That is not just that sounds cool.
Yeah,
it is a very scientific process of engaging the community. And then we kind of we got a great plan for the park, and then we roll into the construction process. And the state works very hard to be good stewards of the public's taxpayer dollars, and because of that, there are certain requirements they go through in the purchasing process, and that is a place that we are proud to be able to support with the foundation. We can be more agile in our purchasing and donations, and which is what has happened at the Parks at the Palo Pinto Mountains, where we can move quickly.
So what does that mean by move quickly? Like, what are you moving quickly on? Like when you come in to do that, like what does that mean? There are places like with a construction process where the department might be obligated to work with these specific folks that are on some kind of existing contract. It might all be very great and well qualified, but maybe we don't have quite as much choice in our construction teams, as one example. So the foundation has more flexibility. So like you guys would step in, and basically y'all would then hire the contractor to step in to kind of expedite that process.
Yeah, with the same, a lot of attention going to making sure that we're being good stewards of the donors that have supported the Parks and Wildlife Foundation. But that is a good example of, I think, where the foundation and the department meet and support one another. And here's the land acquisition process, which the foundation is often involved in, and it's sometimes we can help be a little bit quicker in some of the building process.
Oftentimes, the foundation will acquire a piece of property and then donate it to the department to create that park or whatever they're trying to do.
You said earlier on about community engagement when there's like a new plot of land that you're investigating. What does that look like? I mean, if you're a member of the community like all of us are, how do I engage on what that, I mean, where does that, like, how do you sign up for that list? Is that mailing list? Like, where does that happen?
Any of your listeners will have a ton of fun just exploring around the calendar that's supported by the department. So both, state park specific calendars of upcoming ranger led hikes and stuff. But we also have upcoming community engagement events. And
is that per park, or would they go to like the actual main website for the state?
That one would be like the main website for the state. Would keep it. And I remember in my first year as a department employee, I'm a rock climber. That's been my history. And I got interested in, some of the climbing access in some of our new parks. And I just, while I was an employee, I came as a member of the public to sit in and kind of think about the future. At this time, it was Devil's River, the Dan A. Hughes unit, the South unit there at the Devil's River properties. So that was I just saw it on the website and said, I want to come in there and listen in and kind of, have a chance. I didn't share anything in that one particularly, but those are all made public so that members of the community can join and have their voice heard.
So it would just be, the key there would be keeping an eye on the main state's calendar, or on their website on the calendar, to look at when they have these public hearings and these different opportunities to speak up.
Yeah.
Do they post about it on social media and things like that? Like, if you follow the account, are they like how public are they pushing these things? I've never heard of an actual like, hey, I can go engage for a park. I think that's probably on me, but I'm just curious. There's probably a lot of people that would love to get involved if it was right in front of them.
Yeah, I can't recall if they're posting on social media or not, but I'll refer to this Devil's River one, for example. I went in Austin. Devil's River, of course, is 4 hours west of Austin. So that planning team was touring the state, taking those community feedback sessions.
That's amazing.
So right now, it would, I'm not sure which ones, if any, are kind of in the thick of that planning process. But of all the, Chinati Mountains, Palo Pinto, Powderhorn, and we have new properties that we're given the importance of not only buying a new park, but protecting important adjacent tracts. So Enchanted Rock, not a huge park. It was 1,600 acres for a long time. And you think about all of the area in viewshed of Enchanted Rock that would make for a great home site.
I heard that they purchased a big property around it. Is that
adjacent to it?
Okay, so that was Texas Parks and Wildlife, or the foundation, that made that purchase?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Colorado Bend as well, a recent purchase. And so that's an example of that park already has its established public use plan. And so it may or may not, most of the times it would probably just fit under the existing public use plan in terms of what they're doing on those adjacent tracts of land as they become now a part of a larger footprint of Enchanted Rock. But with all the new parks coming out in the next decade or more, with that $1 billion that our voters got behind, there'll be more and more opportunities for public engagement, and that department calendar is what I'd keep an eye out for.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to do a little tidbit about that on a post or
Cool.
something. I think it's really
Sure.
cool for people to know that exists.
Yeah.
I think this is a rumor, but I'm going to ask it anyways. I've heard that there's a potential threat for that $1 billion to be reallocated, and I heard a rumor that the state is trying to spend it as quick as they can so that no one comes in and does something else with it. Is that true at all?
I haven't
Too
heard
touchy of a
anything.
subject?
I haven't heard anything about that.
Okay.
I doubt it, but I also don't know every detail.
I mean, that's total rumor mill right there. That wasn't actually from like a good source. I just had someone say that, and I don't know if that was.
It was allocated by the legislature, so correct.
I'm not. That is correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's not something I'm worried about. There were some conversations, I believe, and I will say that this is not entirely my expertise, but my understanding is the conversation shifted towards spending the interest that's made rather than spending down.
Oh, so keep the $1 billion and just use the interest to actually.
Yeah.
I
was going to ask, who is managing that money?
The department.
Yeah.
I mean, on $1 billion, that's a lot of money a year if you're getting 0.42%, whatever it is right now. I mean, that's interesting.
And land's not getting any cheaper,
Yeah.
so like that team is working hard, making, again, very detailed and thoughtful purchasing decisions with the support of the foundation to make sure that we're protecting these wonderful gems out there, the next Enchanted Rock, the next Colorado Bend, the next Cedar Hill, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you guys aren't worried, then I won't be worried about it. The Enchanted Rock tract, I mean, Enchanted Rock is such like an icon in the Austin Hill Country area. And do you know if that additional tract is going to be open to the public with trails, or is it purely just a view shed protection?
I don't know offhand, but I'd be very surprised if it was only a view shed. I think that might be an important piece behind let's purchase this.
Yeah.
And you have places like here we are in Austin. Of course, McKinney Falls has townhomes built like on the property line where we had to reroute trails. And so that Texas is growing very fast, and the department park planners know that, and they're working hard to purchase these places that are in the path of development
that's exciting.
as much as we can. And so I do think they'd be accessible.
I know a long time ago, and this is me just probably not being well studied on all the details, but decades ago, like when you go to Longhorn Cavern, that was all done by the CCC. Is CCC just gone these days, or is that still an active thing? Like, was it Civilian Conservation Corps or something like that? Is that just, I don't know the history there. Is that, I'm guessing that's done in...
Yeah, it was a big, I'll do my best on this.
I'll add as I can.
It was, you picture the Great Depression, and a lot of people were out of work, and this is Franklin, this is FDR, says we got to put young men to work. And so they create the Civilian Conservation Corps. We call it the CCC a lot. And parks all over Texas, not just Texas State Parks, but many others. I think it's 28 Texas State Parks that are built by the CCC. So had a huge impact from would have been late 20s to late 30s, I think. So your question today, it exists in different ways. There's a lot of really awesome youth conservation corps that have the same kind of relationship. Good Friend supports the National Forest, CCC. We work a lot with the American Corps. Oh gosh, I'm gonna forget.
Is it American Youth Works?
American Youth
I
Works.
think I just met them. Yeah.
And their Trail Corps that do awesome work in Texas State Parks a lot of times. So in different ways, it is very much still alive in a different capacity.
I just, you go to like any tour of a state park, like I know Bastrop, I think the cabins were built. It's like you go anywhere around here and they have such a rich history, but I've never Googled it or asked anybody like what happened to that. So this is my opportunity. So it sounds like it's been, the actual CCC has been dead and gone a long time. I take it. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe that's something stewards can focus on, is the history of that.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. I'd like the history of these parks and the people that made it all happen, just the foresight they had back then. It's just incredible.
Yeah,
right.
To look ahead. So,
right.
Stewards of the Wild. How big have you all got now? I know there's 8 chapters, but how many members? 8 chapters. Like in the Austin chapter, how many members do you guys have?
Sure, I think Austin's one of our largest chapters. It hovers around 200 members.
Wow.
Before the pandemic, the program was very large. I think we got up to about 1,300 or 1,400 members
across the state.
Across the state, yeah. And I think we're down now. But we hover between 600 and 800.
Okay.
So it's smaller. We would like to see those numbers increase. There's a lot of environmental factors, I think, that prevents people sometimes from signing up. A lot of members, they'll lapse and they don't realize their membership is not active, but they still come to our events. And so our reach is larger than that because we have so many partners involved and other folks who like to join and help out. So it's hard to say exactly how many people we're touching each year, but that's my estimate. Yeah.
It sounds like very solid chapters and good groups. And the couple events I've been to was really cool group of people, and it's packed.
Yeah,
people really show up. It seems like.
And the crazy thing is, it's all volunteer led. These volunteers blow me out of the water because I'm like, I'm doing this. While this job for me is also like a passion job, it blows me out of the water that these people will spend this much time just volunteering to help, plan these events and educate these people and get more people involved. So we love our volunteers.
That's cool.
Couldn't do it without them.
Yeah. So looking ahead, this is a question to both of you on your individual things you're working on, but what are the next big hurdles that each of you are trying to overcome? I mean, I'm just kind of curious what the next 5 years looks like for each of you in your roles.
Got a great question.
That's a great question.
I mean, it's a big job, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that from the
Well, I hear that. I'm like, well, what do
department.
you do? There's so many things going on. So I'm curious. It's like, what's next? I just cut you off. Sorry. But.
Yeah, no. It's so always like looking for and welcoming the people of Texas to get involved and help. So in specifically, engaging with Stewards of the Wild, contact your local state park and say, hey, here's my skill set. How can I help? And I'm sure and I know you do this, incredible photographers, playing a role to help tell the stories of conservation. So I mean, for us, it is just continuing to be good stewards of Texas's wild places and wild things. Opening new parks. We are very proud to the foundation have to just help to celebrate the soon to open updates to the Texas Freshwater Fishery Center in Athens.
Cool. That's very exciting.
A lot of cool programming to educate the future anglers of Texas. So we at the foundation put a lot of energy behind that. So that's one that we're excited about. It just had a VIP opening. We'll have a grand opening here shortly.
July 1st.
Cool.
Open to the public.
And what is this? It's a hatchery?
It's called the Texas Freshwater Fishery Center. It's been around for decades in Athens, Texas, and they just did a facelift on it, basically, bring it to modern times. And it's an educational center where you can learn about various freshwater fish in Texas, around Texas, not just up there in East Texas where Athens is. And there's a lake there where they can fish. They put on events, educational. It's all education.
Yeah.
Huge.
And it's a hatchery. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a hatchery. You're so right, Katie. And in huge tanks, you get to see the biggest bass in Texas. At least the share lunkers.
Have you heard of the share lunker?
The biggest.
Hunting those down for years.
Yeah. I got to peek inside the tank when I was up there a couple months ago. It's wild. So just a big museum and nature center focused specifically on Texas's freshwater fish. The department has helped to create 1 billion fish through our fisheries programs.
Wow.
And that's helping to support, the game fish and create healthy fish populations in Texas's freshwater and saltwater. So that was a big accomplishment recently.
Yeah, how cool.
Putting the billionth fish out in the water.
Billy.
We
believe he's still out there.
Yeah. I like this billion. It's like a good theme. We got 1 billion fish. We got $1 billion. Let's get 1 billion acres. I mean, I like where we're going with
this. Like it. We'll just take some Oklahoma and Arkansas.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
it's great. Yeah, the foundation though, it focuses on much more than just state parks. We've talked a lot about state parks, which makes sense today. But we're also, honestly, with Stewards and the foundation, I feel like we don't do anything alone. Everything is always a partnership with experts from the department, Borderlands Research Institute in West Texas. We bring in people from all over. It's never done alone. Whether that's, the experts or the funders, it's impossible for one person to do it all. So, but we do things like our desert bighorn sheep restoration initiative. I don't know if y'all saw, they moved part of a herd over to Elephant Mountain.
Yeah, with like helicopters? Was that them where they're like dangling below the helicopter? I saw a clip of that happening.
Yeah, so
from Elephant to Franklin Mountains, was it?
Is that right?
That's one, at least that's one I saw recently, Franklin Mountains in El Paso.
That's right. I'm sorry. That's right. That's right.
They were raising the population maybe at Elephant.
Yes.
There was a video I saw on social media of someone like, I guess out hiking or something, had no clue that was happening. I'll have to try to find it. It was the funniest thing. And this girl was like, what? And like, no one's going, just like all of a sudden there's like things flying by in helicopters.
But have you ever hunted aoudad?
I have not, but I know all about them.
Yeah, they suspect it's the MOV from aoudad that are killing the desert bighorn sheep. And so they're doing that research and trying to restore the population.
There's a property that it's a nature preserve near here, kind of a private conservation easement held deal, and that I'm hunting hog on right now. Not successfully, but I'm attempting to try to hunt wild hog because they have some issues. And I just on a game camera, a whole group of aoudad showed up. And I was like, whoa. And this is like right outside of Austin.
Wild.
Yeah. And so they're now on my list. But
they actually can taste great if you cook them the right way. So that's
what
I've learned.
So we'll see what happens.
I asked an old conservation mentor. I was like hiking out in Big Bend. And I was like, he's like, you might see aoudad. I said, what do they look like? He said, they look like pure evil. And of course, to the audience, they're just an invasive species that have been introduced. But
The foundation has worked on, with partners, of course, restoring the black bear population in West Texas. And we just saw something this morning in North Texas.
Yeah.
There was a black bear spotted.
Wow.
North of Dallas.
North of Dallas. So that's
amazing.
interesting. Yeah, so it's also the wildlife side of things. But the parks obviously are very important as well. I mean, to the foundation, it's incredible how much they've done in just the last, 32 or so years.
That's all they've been around?
Yeah,
Wow.
it
1991.
91.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yep.
I'm involved with this group, this nonprofit called Austin Wildlife Rescue, and we take in around 10,000 animals a year and rehabilitate and re-release all the ones we can. And we're in the process right now of looking at building a new campus for wildlife rescue. And it's pretty cool. I got excited when I saw the plans and it had black bear cages. And I was like, we're planning for the future. And so we might as well build black bear cages, if we get some, because they were native to here. And
Interesting.
when we had Ben Masters on the podcast, that was, I think, my favorite question for him was, 500 years ago, if you were to go to the Barton Creek Greenbelt, what are we looking at, like animal-wise? And it's just shocking the list that you have, jaguars, and it's just crazy how much it's changed. So I'd love to see some of these animal, and elk are coming back into Texas.
Y'all's thoughts? I was about to ask that on elk, because I've seen game trail photos of elk close to Amarillo, and then of course there's hunts being sold in West Texas.
I mean, I don't have a lot of educated opinions on the elk in Texas. I mean, I think they're beautiful animals. I haven't heard about any huge negatives to having them here. Have you?
No, I can't really speak to it personally, but I do think humans have a lot of power to destroy nature, and we have a lot of power to help rebuild nature. And it's cool seeing Texas as a whole in that chapter of getting to rebuild some of the native populations that were out hunted, hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I don't know the elk story specifically, but if they were native to this area, I love the idea of seeing them reintroduced.
Yeah, I agree.
I know there's a game ranch around Dripping Springs that truck drove through the high fence, and so they got out. So now I've actually seen elk multiple times on low fence ranch around Dripping Springs. It's pretty cool.
Interesting.
Very small population of them, but
like Ben's work with the ocelots, I think is so cool. And CKWRI, are y'all familiar? Caesar Clayburgh Wildlife Research Institute in Kingsville. They're actually working on an ocelot facility to help facilitate the population's growth. And I think it's so neat, the work that everyone has done. And I'm over here, I don't really know anything. I have a lifetime of learning in front of me, but I really, really respect these people who have spent their entire lives dedicated to doing this work. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people like Ben, I love, we get to work with him a bit with Stewards of the Wild, but I think those storytellers, especially because we're in such a visual age, they're so important, especially with young folks, to show them these things and show them why they're important.
I think it's a tool to get people motivated and get up and actually do something when they can really visually see it. Before we wrap up, I want to know more about you all, as individuals. I mean, what's your background? How did each of you end up in the roles that you're in now?
Me first? It's a long story, but I'll try to shorten it. But I grew up, I was very lucky. I had parents that took us outdoors constantly. I got to hunt, I got to fish.
Where are you from?
Dallas. I'm from Dallas.
Okay, so this is all Dallas area?
Yes, I grew up right in the heart of the city. So, we were never on a ranch, but my dad also grew up in Dallas, as well as my mom. My dad, though, he always went hunting and fishing with his parents. He went fishing with his parents as a 3-day-old in a shoebox. So it's kind of in our blood, but I was lucky. He treated me and my brother the same. He didn't look at me as a girl and say, I'm not going to take you hunting, I'm not going to take you fishing. So I got way more into it than my brother did. And they would take us on trips every year to New Mexico, only road trips. We're not flying anywhere. We're doing road trips. We're going to pull a little pop-up trailer behind the minivan, and we're going to go camp in New Mexico. And some of my favorite memories are sitting at our campsite watching hummingbirds come to the feeder with my brother and just sitting there in awe. I mean, it felt like hours. Who knows how long I actually did that as, a 7-year-old. But that's, I think, where my love of the outdoors and nature came from. The conservation piece came much later. My background is in communications, PR. I was always a great writer, and I was on the student newspaper in high school, and I thought, I'll study journalism, but I'm going to do PR because that'll make more money. I won't make any money being a journalist. So I did that, and I got a degree, and I started working in that. And I was like, man, I really need to do something that makes a difference. Like, I need to help someone, somewhere, something. I just can't do this where I'm making more money for, I won't say the company's name, but a huge company, you know? So I decided, my backup plan was always to teach. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go teach. So I ended up teaching high school journalism for about 4.5 years, which was an amazing experience. I am a much better person for it and those kids. I loved creating those relationships. I loved teaching the content, but the education system is really tough, I think, and there's so much I wished would be different, and it wasn't. And while I was teaching, I was like, I don't know if this is a forever thing, like, what do I really care about? What do I want to do? I was like, why don't I go outside? Like, what's outside for me? And I got connected with a friend who was a part of Stewards of the Wild at the time. And she said, come to this happy hour with me for Stewards of the Wild. And I was like, what's that? So I went, and that evening I met Phil Lamb, who was with Rolling Plains at the time, Rolling Quail?
I don't know.
Rolling Plains Quail Coalition, sorry.
There's a lot of funky names in conservation, I will say.
I know. Anyway, I met him, and I met Austin Taylor, who manages our Gear Up for Game Wardens program at the foundation. Phil, shortly after that, joined the foundation as well, and I told them, I'm looking for this, and I think they could sense like there was a lot of passion there, but I didn't have experience in the conservation world, and so I was just looking for help. I was like, help me get into this. And I think they really took that to heart. And then at that same happy hour, Tyler Sharp with Modern Huntsman, I think, was releasing the first volume of Modern Huntsman. I don't know if you guys read that
I'm familiar
magazine.
with it, but I don't read it.
But I loved his idea of, we don't have to like demonize hunting. Like, hunting's not, it had this stigma, right? That it was like, we're just going and murdering animals. Yeah. No, that's not what we're doing.
All the original conservationists.
Right. And so he was trying to show how this is actually conservation. And I was like, wow, what a great idea. Like, this person's involved. Phil and Austin seem great. My friend Lily was awesome. And so, a couple years go by. I end up quitting my teaching job. And the pandemic hit. And I was like, oh man. So I had moved in with my parents. I was like, I got to get a job of some sort. I've got to do something. My brother at the time was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer at 31, which is my age now, which is insane. But that year, I really reevaluated a lot. And I was like, what am I doing? So I got a job, and, I worked that for a while, and it was great. But I was like, this conservation thing, I think, is where I need to live. Like, this actually could make a difference for not just my generation or my kids, but maybe after that. And so I was involved in Stewards of the Wild. I had joined the advisory council, which kind of plans everything. And I planned this ladies fishing trip to Athens, Texas. And it was so rewarding. I mean, we had, I think, 5 women, but we taught them how to fish, and they had a great time. And it was really rewarding. And then I heard that this position was open. And so I finally got a hold of the job description, and I kept going down the bullets, and I was like, wait, that's me, but that's me, that's me, that's me. It was like I fit. It was weird. Yeah. I was like, this is, I think, kind of a sign. And so I got with Phil, who was at the foundation, and I interviewed with the executive director, then was Susan Houston. I was very intimidated. But I just put it out there, and that cover letter, I took way too long writing that thing. It was days.
It worked,
it was painstaking. Yeah. Anyway, so I got the job, and the rest is history. And I don't see myself leaving the conservation world at any time in my life. So.
That's amazing. What a cool path to lead you there.
A little topsy-turvy, but, I made it.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Kai?
I think, like Katie, I had folks that got me outdoors from a very young age. I grew up here in Austin. At this point, I've been to every Texas state park.
Oh, wow. That's a feat in
itself. It is a feat. And my parents, took me to my very first here in Austin, McKinney Falls State Park. So those, that conservation cycle is everywhere. So I grew up as a Boy Scout here in Austin, had a lot of opportunity to get exposed to the outdoors.
Which troop?
Learn skills. Troop 410.
410?
Yeah, out of Hyde Park Baptist. Up off the Balcones Road. And when I got to college, we'd go camping on the weekend occasionally, and I noticed that, like, my friends didn't have, like, certain basic skills. Like, you mean you don't know how to tie a square knot? Like, these things that I just grew up, of course, thinking that you're just taking for granted. And with that, kind of just realized, like, I guess, like, outdoors is kind of a thing I'm interested in, and got in a conservation internship, fell in love with rock climbing and mountain biking and backpacking, and just became something I really cared about. And in a couple years out of college, had the opportunity to go work at Texas State Parks. My first job was teaching families how to go camping.
That was your first job?
With the Texas Outdoor
So
Family
cool.
Program.
Yeah.
And great program still out there available through that Texas Parks and Wildlife calendar of events. And for 10 years, my job was to help Texans fall in love with nature in Texas State Parks. Became the director of interpretation over there. Interpretation is like education. The director of education for Texas State Parks, and now 2.5 years now been with the foundation. So gosh, that conservation cycle and getting exposed young to nature certainly is a theme in both of our lives, and bringing us back to conservation. I'm sure y'all as well.
Yeah, very cool.
2.5 years. It's been that long.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Time
Wonderful.
flies when you're having fun.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, especially in the outdoors. What have we missed? Anything else pressing? Anything else that you guys want to talk about while we're here?
I think, we say leaders within Stewards of the Wild. We're looking to make conservation leaders. And I think a lot of people get intimidated by that. But I don't want people to be intimidated. I want everyone to feel like they can make a difference. And you don't have to get up and speak in front of a bunch of people. You don't have to do a podcast. You don't have to work for a conservation organization. But if you can just play your little part at home and teach your family and your kids, I think that's so important. I wish everyone felt that way. But
Yeah,
I think sometimes I hear from a lot of stewards that say, my first event, I was so intimidated. I almost didn't come because I was worried everyone would be so smart, know everything. And I just want people to know that that's not true. You don't have to know anything, but you can make a difference.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, what about you, Kai? Anything else?
Man, Katie said it well, didn't she?
Yeah.
To our listeners out there, you have skill set, you have interest. And between the Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation, Stewards of the Wild, Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, we have a role for you somewhere. We need your support. Texas is a very special place. Incredible wildlife populations, incredible natural resources, cultural, human history, and everyone out there has something they can do to take a step towards enjoying it more, appreciating it more, or helping to protect it in some way. And I'd say lean into that, use those skills, use that interest to give back in some way or just get more involved.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you both for everything you're doing for conservation and the land and us civilians who enjoy the great parks and everything else, and appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Yeah,
Of course.
glad to be
Thank
here.
you.
Thank y'all.
Okay, so we hit stop on the recording, and then we got into a fascinating conversation. So this is an after the beep little blur, but Kai, please continue on with what we were talking about.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, there's just so many cool projects and programs that the Parks and Wildlife Foundation is involved in, and one of our newer programs is called the Pollinators and Prairies program. And if you think about Texas, like think about the natural resources of Texas, we had a lot of native Texas prairies historically, really rich in biodiversity. And you look at a forest, you look at a prairie, which one is easier to build on? Naturally, a prairie is. And so a lot of our native prairies have been built on. That's the nature of our populations growing. So the Parks and Wildlife Foundation right now is working really hard to increase the amount of native Texas prairies in our state, and in doing so, create more habitat for pollinators.
This is probably a stupid question, but when we say prairie, in my head, I'm just thinking like grassland, like a big grassy field. Is that accurate?
Do you know anything about the ecoregions of Texas? And we have the Blackland Prairie, there's the coastal prairies. But yeah, I mean, grasslands.
Yeah, and I think probably a very common ecosystem was like a grassland savanna, like a prairie. So you have native grasses, wildflowers interspersed with a few trees, but not necessarily a thick stand of trees. I think that was a really common ecosystem. And so we're working hard right now to educate the children of today's children about the importance of native prairies, native plants, and habitat for our pollinators. And it's one of our goals to make it a lot easier for not only landowners but homeowners to think about how they can do their part to create habitat for pollinators. You think about the difference of St. Augustine lawn, which of course I grew up with, and it takes a lot of watering, it takes a lot of mowing, which I did every summer. But if we can thoughtfully include some native plantings there, flowering native plants, we will make a pollinator's day by doing that, and we will increase habitat between our parklands and our WMAs and stuff. Pollinators and migratory birds will actually see our homes as a piece of their habitat, and connecting all of these otherwise separate chunks of habitat. Is that a fair way to describe that program?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So what is this program doing? I mean, it's like, how does that outreach work? I mean, if I'm a homeowner and I want to get involved, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, we're working hard right now on educational programs with not only children, doing some youth-based education in partnership with the Native Prairie Society of Texas.
Would that be like through schools they're
Through
doing
schools,
that? Okay.
Right. And also, it's a project of ours. I'm not sure if we have a release date yet, but we'd like to make the education of homeowners make it more attainable, accessible for how they can plant native plants in their own yard. So we have an app coming out to support that project.
Cool. And I know, obviously we just listed off different types of prairies that we have just in the area, and you go from like Austin, where you have the Blackland Prairie, to the east of 35, and then it gets to the hill country to the west. I mean, is this app going to be focused on, I live in, McKinney, or I live in Bastrop? Are you going to be able to okay, I should plant this plant versus this plant? I mean,
right, there's gonna have some geographic focus. What we do not want to have is encourage the wrong plant in the wrong place. So and big shout out to HEB for the support that they've given the program. They truly are walking the walk in terms of the plants that they're putting in at their or selling
at the stores. Or even
wow, a lot of intention, collaboration with the foundation department to make sure that what they're putting in their stores is supporting the habitat we need in Texas.
That's amazing.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the PNP Pollinators and Prairies program, we've also funded some small pocket prairies across the state. So whether that's at a school or somewhere, just to create small habitat to show people this is what, and to help the ecosystem right there in that area.
How cool. What a great program. And also, huge shout out to HEB, not a sponsor. Wish they were. I would let them sponsor us for free. Maybe I should just call them a sponsor, even though they're not. But they are just incredible. Like almost every organization I'm involved in the nonprofit conservation world, they've donated. They're probably one of the top 5 donors, if not top 2. It's just incredible what they're doing across the state. So bravo, HEB, and for you guys.
Yeah,
too.
it's hard to go to a Texas conservation event without seeing the HEB logo
that's
in their
true.
Field and Future program.
Yes, it's awesome.
And big shout out to them.
And that program actually supports the foundation as well.
Wow.
For the funds.
That's how companies should be run. It's amazing.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're awesome. I actually heard a fun fact from Tori this weekend too, that she said that native grasses, are actually better at carbon
sequestration.
Than trees.
Wow.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because you think, let's go plant trees. Maybe we should be planting prairies.
We'll end on that note.
Cool.
All right. Thanks y'all.
Thank you.
Okay.